Again, thank you for joining us for the webinar, Coping Skills, Tools to Help You Live More Fully. My name is Rosalind Dahl. I'm a Communications and Development Director for the Oley Foundation. I think everyone is probably familiar with the Oley Foundation, but in case this is your first experience, I'd like to briefly introduce the organization to you. The Oley Foundation strives to enrich the lives of those living with home nutrition support, both intravenous nutrition, sometimes called HPN or TPN, and tube feeding. We do this through education, outreach, and networking. The Oley Foundation was founded in 1983 by Dr. Lynn Howard and her patient Clarence Oley Oldenburg. Today, we serve approximately 17,000 members. All of our programs, like this webinar, are free of charge for patients and their families. First, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping details with you. On your screen, you should see a toolbar in the upper right corner. Click on the orange arrow to see the rest of the control panel if you haven't done so already. During the question section, you can type in any questions you have for me or for the presenters. In fact, you can type them in at any time, but we'll just be responding to them during natural breaks in the talk. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. We'll be posting a recording of this presentation after the webinar is finished on the Oley website, so you can go back to this as many times as you'd like. Please note that we've muted all of you so that you don't need to worry if there's background noise where you are taking this webinar. And if you are having technical issues, go to the website that is listed in the middle of your screen, help.citrix.com/webinar/join. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Donna Yadrick. Donna is a public policy advocate for children, youth, and adults with special health care needs and their family caregivers with firsthand experience as a mother of a medically complex child. Donna has been working on clinical research projects funded by the National Institutes of Health for more than 25 years at the University of Kansas Medical Center. For the past 11 years, she has worked with Oley members on HPN studies using mobile technology. Donna earned a Bachelor's of Science in Life Science and Physical Science and a Master's of Public Administration in Health Services. Since 2006, Donna has worked with Dr. Carol Smith. Under her mentorship, Donna has authored and co-authored several peer-reviewed journal articles. Also through her work with Dr. Smith, Donna, her daughter Audrey, and her son Peter found the Oley Foundation, a community with which they shared common ground. Although Audrey was not on HPN or HEN, she had very serious and rare autoimmune syndrome that contributed to her death in 2011. Prior to her death, Audrey joined the state of Kansas's Youth Advisory Council for Youth with Special Health Care Needs. To honor Audrey's unfinished work, Donna works to improve the experience of the chronically ill and their family members. She serves on several state and national initiatives and has founded a business named Audrey Spirit, which designs and manufactures clothing for infants, children, youth, and adults with medical complexity. We are grateful to Donna for sharing her expertise today. We are also joined by Mariah Abercrombie. Mariah received her master's in social work from Virginia Commonwealth University in 2012. She received her certificate in disability leadership in 2013. She has vast experience in home health, hospice, and pediatric medical advocacy. Mariah has been TPN dependent since 1983 due to pseudoobstruction syndrome, intestinal failure, and secondary short bowel. In 2015, she began experiencing extreme muscle weakness and was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition known as polymyositis. I hope I said that right. Despite her health limitations, Mariah maintains a positive outlook and enjoys sharing her stories to help others. Mariah is available to share her experiences, both professional and personal, and to answer your questions in the Q&A period. Thank you for joining us today, Mariah. Donna, I'm now going to turn the presentation over to you.
Okay, and I'm going to try to give you just a couple of slides because I'm trying to make a case. Maybe we could even see if we could see them on my screen. Could we try that? Try that?
Yep.
No, I don't think I'm logged into the same thing you are. I'm going to see if I can email them to you real quick, okay?
Okay, sure.
Um, well, welcome everybody. What I'm trying to, I don't know if people can type in the chat box who is on, if it's an enteral user or a parental user or a caregiver of a child or adult or a clinician. If you could type in and we could kind of see who's on, that would be awesome.
So, Donna, we're showing that we have a caregiver for an NG tube family member, and we have a TPN dependent patient on.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. One of the things that I learned from my daughter is that when you have medical problems and you don't fall in categories that are typical in the disability community, and nobody wants to be considered, to be a disabled person, it's very hard to, just get through day-to-day experiences. My daughter Audrey had autoimmune polyglandular syndrome, and part of that was she lost her hair, she had spotted skin, she had vitiligo, and multiple organ problems, but she looked different, and she was very malnourished, so she was very small. She passed away at the age of 15, and I think she weighed 70 to 80 pounds. And she looked different, and so, Audrey was, she was stared at a lot. She was, the first question was, what's wrong with you? And I think for me, the biggest thing, I don't know if people are familiar with people first language. Is that something you have on the Oley website, Rosalind?
No, I don't believe we have people first, but it's something we could add.
Yeah. Well, when my daughter got involved in the disability community, she didn't consider herself disabled, as most people with medical problems don't. But when you start to use that language, you begin to actually self-advocate. And I think that for me and for Audrey, that was the number one thing, is as she felt more empowered, knowledgeable, and didn't take things personally, because when you feel like they're staring at me because I'm different, you take that very personally, but you can take control over that. And say, because sometimes we had to have oxygen with us, just weird stuff all the time. And so we would try to put a positive spin on it. So I think that's part of it, is you're not disabled. You have something that requires you to do something differently. And you may not have to do it all the time, but so she, instead of saying she had a breathing problem and that's why she was lugging oxygen, it was, I wanted to go to the movies and I needed a little more help. Just make it positive. One of the other things is having a posse, having a few trusted individuals that you can know will have your back. So, when she would try to go places and, she'd make plans, she couldn't keep the plans because her body made other plans, your friends start to drop off. And the best thing you can do is have a few really close friends that you actually share stuff with, and you share your vulnerabilities and say, I'm concerned about being left behind. And if I can't go 4 times in a row when you ask me, I want you to keep asking, because people are afraid to show their vulnerability, that they're afraid of being left behind. And people think they're bothering you, and they want to spend time with you. I remember, too, when we'd go out to eat, Audrey had diabetes, and she had juvenile diabetes, and so she'd have to check her blood sugar. She'd have to, do all this stuff at the table before we could even eat or during eating. And if she could eat, she'd order food and then couldn't eat. And so I wish I would have known those times to request accommodations ahead of time. And I'm just going to give a couple examples, and I'm going to ask Mariah to jump in. But we never wanted to think of ourselves as having a disability, because we always had the hope that things were going to get better, medical treatment was going to advance, and it did in many ways during the course of her life, but not to the extent we needed it to. And when you start thinking in terms of, I have a medical disability that causes interruptions in X, Y, and Z, when you think of it like that, it's not so bad. You can't take it personally. It's kind of like if it's raining outside, you use an umbrella and you don't need it when it's not raining. And so I tried to get her to think of it like that, is, when circumstances require you to use the umbrella, you don't give it a second thought. You just do it, and you keep from getting wet. And that's how you have to, see these other things. It's not about you, it's about the rain. So, Mariah, what are some of your thoughts?
As far as you're talking about whether I view myself as disabled or not?
Well, whether you have, throughout the course of your life, had to accept that you've got to, circumstances have dictated, do you feel circumstances have dictated where you have to admit that, yes, I have a medical disability, but that doesn't mean that I'm not living a full life?
Right, absolutely. I think there are times that it's kind of been a struggle to let go of kind of unrealistic expectations for myself, and trust that, my body is limited, and if I push myself too far, the consequences are going to be worse than trying to moderate what I'm doing. So, for example, once I graduated with my master's, I started working, and I started working more hours, more days, more shifts, and it caught up with me, and eventually I had to slow down. And so I think kind of understanding that for me, it was very hard for me not to compare myself to quote unquote typical peers, what I saw everybody else my age group doing. Well, they're working a full-time job, I want to work a full-time job. They're going to school full-time, I want to go to school full-time. And realizing that, I just have to make my own normal, that their normal is not my normal. And just because I'm not necessarily working full-time, that doesn't make me any less of a person. I just have to adjust to quote unquote my normal and make that work for my body. And that took a lot of accepting and kind of working it through myself, and even working through that with a counselor and trying to be accepting of myself and my limitations.
That's a very good point. Have you had circumstances where people stared at you in public? Audrey was stared at all the time.
Right. I'm sure there have been instances where people have been curious or staring. I try to be fairly open, and if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I also kind of realize that, sometimes I'm a curious person, so even though I'm afflicted with an illness myself and I know how inconsiderate it can be to stare at someone, I'm sure I've done that myself at times just because I am so curious by other people. So if I see somebody else that, I kind of recognize a medical equipment, or, I see somebody, sometimes I am just staring myself out of curiosity or kind of wondering, like, how can I connect with this person? So I try not to take it too personal. I think a lot of times it's out of just people are curious and they don't know, and often they don't realize how inconsiderate it can come off.
Mhm. Well, I kind of went through an adjustment period, I guess. At first, I thought Audrey started getting sick when she was 23 months, seriously sick. She had heart failure for a while at that time, and at first you think your kid's got something unusual happening and it's going to be fixed and that's it. And so I would explain things, her legs are swollen because she has cardiac failure or whatever, or she's doing this because of that, or things like that. And then I got to the point where sometimes the questions were so invasive and so, like somebody asked, she had spotted skin, and they said, was she playing in the mud? And I said, no, she was little tiny, like 2, and hanging on my leg as a toddler. And they just would not quit asking questions when I said, no, was she burned? Was she this? Was she that? And I just grabbed her and walked off and so probably when she was around 8 or 9, I decided I'm not going to answer medical questions outside of a medical area. And so that's what I would do. If I was uncomfortable, I would just say, we don't talk about that at Walmart. So
Yeah, I think making boundaries like that are kind of, asking your child, what are you comfortable with, is an important thing to factor in, because some people can be extremely invasive and just rude, frankly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you too. This is something I always saw myself as, self-advocacy and boundaries and all of that. I always asked Audrey, I gave her the choice. Like, she was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 10, and they were teaching us how to give her her first shot. And she said, no, I'll do it. And so I let her do whatever she felt she needed to do. So I always saw myself as support staff, just I'm here to catch you if there's a bad situation or whatever, that you be who you are all the time. And one of the things, like my mom isn't feeling well. I had a couple sisters with problems, and it gets tricky as a caregiver. So I'm kind of going to ask you a couple of questions. I want to make sure, how do we caregivers not encroach on your rights or make you feel like you're dependent? What advice would you give to parents of kids, or, if me taking care of my husband had cancer last year, what advice would you give?
Right. Well, I think I'm sure we have some Oley parents out there. I think, getting your kids involved at an early age, to their abilities. So if you have a young child, just letting them answer the doctor's questions to their ability and then filling in. Or, if they're not able to do that, just making sure that they're maybe paying attention for a few minutes while the doctor's talking versus being totally, into their iPad or something, where they're not even paying attention to what the doctor's saying. Um, I didn't start really um, taking over my care till the young teenage years, but I think, each child's different, and I think every parent has to kind of gauge how their child um, is wanting to be involved. Are they asking at a young age, I want to um, do that alcohol wipe, or I want to empty my ostomy bag, or whatever it may be. um, Look for their signs and encourage them with those things. And then as they get older, I think sometimes you have to um, kind of help them advocate for themselves. I think that's extremely important, learning how to be able to answer questions at an appointment, or start to be able to list their medications or list what conditions they have. Those are all skills that they're going to need to be able to do at a certain point. So starting young, I think, is important.
Okay. So
It sounds
when
like your daughter was naturally good at all that.
she wanted no help. She was born an adult. She really was.
Yeah.
But now that you're an adult, like with family or friends wanting to help, or like me, I would say, have you checked your blood sugar? When I was just walking by her or whatever. What level of involvement from a family member, a friend, a peer, your parents, as an adult now, would you feel is crossing the line?
Right. That gets a little harder because that is kind of a more sticky subject as far as trying not to be negative or whatnot, but yet still being, you're still family, you still care, you still want to be um, involved. Usually you're coming from a place of caring and wanting to help the person. So I think it's okay to ask questions, but to do it from a place of wanting to help them versus trying to be controlling. Um, I think that's kind of how you have to come at it. It's Every family's different, and I know I still appreciate having my mom here to help me. There are days that she's still, if I've had a busy day, and she knows I'm going to be exhausted when I get home, she'll, drop my vitamins and make sure my TPN's in my room and things like that. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate having somebody go to appointments with me and be able to hear what the doctor says so that they can um, interpret that too, because sometimes it can be a lot of information quickly, and sometimes afterwards I'm like, now what did they say?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's still important to be involved as much as you can, and kind of to communicate with a family member and ask them, hey, is this okay that I go with you? Is it okay that I'm involved with this? Or, hey, I see that you're having some difficulty, you know, remembering to take your meds. How do you feel about me, setting a reminder for you? Is that okay with you? And just, I think if you ask permission, that often probably makes the person feel that you're coming from a place of trying to help them, and they would probably be more receptive to it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to step in, Donna, for just a second. This is Roslyn. We've had some questions while you guys were talking.
I was just going to ask. Great. What are they?
So one of the participants is asking if we can talk about other areas of coping. And another participant is asking specifically about traveling with TPN. And I'm sure that Mariah can talk a little bit about traveling, but I want to say up front that we'll be having a webinar specifically on traveling. We're hoping to schedule that for May. And there are there are resources on the Oley website for traveling under Life to the Fullest. But if Mariah, if you could address that one quickly, and then when we're done with a brief overview of the travel, maybe move on to the next coping talk, part of the talk, like maybe not eating and a social situation, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just briefly talk shortly on travel. So with travel, it's really important just to plan ahead, make sure that that you've got the supplies that you need, that you're taking. If you're flying, be sure that you're taking into the cabin with you at least a day's worth of supplies. Kind of know where you're going and maybe have a contact person there or a hospital there that if there's an emergency that you know this is a major medical center that has a good ER that if I have an issue I'm going to be able to go to. If you have a central line, try to take some things that you might not think of, like a central line repair kit, and just take extra emergency supplies with you, and then check out for that upcoming webinar. There's a lot that goes into traveling, and it depends on if you're flying or you're driving, and whether you're parental or enteral, and whether you're pediatric or adult. So hopefully we can answer more of that in the next one.
Okay, I would like to add two things. Make sure you have a medical summary from your current provider, kind of an overview in case you would get emergently admitted. And make sure, work with your infusion supplier or home health company, whatever supplies you might need, have them shipped to where you are and verify that they got there. Because sometimes I've known from the Oley conferences, folks have been disappointed because things hadn't arrived as they thought.
Yes, and I agree with Donna. I always have all of my supplies shipped, whether I'm going just 300 miles or 1,000 miles. I have all of my supplies shipped except for the day's travel that I'm for the current day and the current night, and that makes things a lot easier. And I'm able to track them through my email and know when they get there. And then often I've arrived at hotels and the hotel tells me, I'm sorry, ma'am, your boxes aren't here. And I'm able to pull up my tracking email and say, hey, these boxes were delivered at 6 o'clock and they were signed for by so and so. I know they're here. Find them. And sure enough, 9 times out of 10, they're able to find them. So, but your home health care company should be able to help you with all of that, and they're a wonderful resource. So ask them for help because often they have staff that is very skilled in travel assistance.
I would also, at times Audrey wouldn't have much energy, and I wanted her to enjoy what she could. And so sometimes it's not a bad idea to ask the local agency to go ahead and deliver a wheelchair if you might need one. That way she could still leave the room and go places if she wasn't feeling, very good. That's just something to think about if you have energy concerns. Trying to think of, TSA documentation. Have a note from your doctor for TSA stuff, just to try to avoid drama if you have a central line or anything. Can you think of anything else, Mariah?
No, I think that's good. What was the other thing, Roz, that we wanted to touch on?
Oh, I
Not
think
eating in social situations. You know, the
yes.
difficulty in being sociable where everything's around food.
You gonna tackle that one, Donna?
I can only say what I know from Oley. Oley has that wonderful card for consumers that says, you know, I may or may not be able to eat, and, you know, like, don't drive me nuts for the server staff, which I think is wonderful. And, you know, from our studies, we've heard a lot of really good compliments from folks who have used that card. So that's a good thing. And then some people have said that they just have drinks that they sip on. Some people say, like, if it's a buffet or something like a holiday party, they might put some things on a plate and walk around. But I think everybody does everything a little differently. What do you do, Mariah?
Right. That's where I would say, you really got to just listen to yourself and your body. If it makes you extremely uncomfortable to sit at a table and have to watch other people eat, then, it's okay to excuse yourself and maybe go sit somewhere else and not partake in that. You may have family members that feel like you're being unsocial and, whatnot, but really it comes down to doing what's best for you and what you feel comfortable with. If you feel comfortable sitting at the table and you're able to, have a glass of water or have something to drink or maybe have, some small bland food or whatever you tolerate, then that's what you do. It might be important to let the hostess know, what you are able to eat. And if you're not comfortable with that, bring with you what you're able to eat so that you have it with you and you can sit down at the table. And then, explaining to people, I'm sorry, I'm not able to sit down at the table. It just, it makes my nausea worse. I'm going to sit down in the family room while you guys eat, and then we'll socialize together when you're finished. So there's no easy answer. There's our society, food is a very social part of our lives, and not being able to partake in that is certainly not an easy thing to overcome. So don't be tough on yourself, and do what's best for your body.
Well, and it's uncomfortable sometimes. I remember Audrey, we'd go somewhere and somebody, a family member who was an extended family member would be like, oh, I made your favorite strawberry, whatever, you're going to love it. This is what you loved last year. And it's like, that was so last year, that we're in a different place now. And you don't want to go into all of that. But sometimes, like Mariah said, letting a few people know ahead of time, that's like your posse who can have your back, and that's uncomfortable. It is hard to have to say, here's what's going on. But I think if you frame it in just like you need to have the meal, it's time for you to have your meal. It's time for me to go do X, Y, and Z. And if you make it about that instead of what you can't do, just say it's just like you have a time to eat, I have a time for this. So planning ahead is very important, and bringing your own food is very important, and letting people know that it's not that you're being disrespectful, it's just that you have a different set of nutritional needs.
And I think understanding that some people aren't going to be necessarily supportive.
Right.
Some people aren't going to fully understand, and that's okay. Just reiterate, my doctor has told me that I'm not able to eat right now. If you want to put it out on the doctor, that's okay.
That's good. That is very good. Put it on the doctor. Yeah. Are there any other questions, Roz, or comments?
Not at this moment. So if you want to continue, I think some of the coping issues that are near and dear to people are, let me think of the other one, is
I was
kind
going
of,
to talk about mood.
oh yeah, that's fine.
Uh,
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Mood, yeah, mood and depression are things people don't like to, they kind of feel guilty uh, for feeling blue or sad. Our society, Becca, pull yourself up, 10 days a new day, all of that stuff is a lot of really unrealistic pressure. And depression is it's a biochemical reaction to chronic stress. And whether it's physiologic stress of a body that, requires nutritional support, or just, lack of sleep contributes to depression because the body can't do its metabolic processes. And so those are very common issues. The fatigue, because people have to infuse all night, or they have stomach pain, or colostomy issues, or having to urinate. Whatever it is, sleep is interrupted for both consumers and family members. And over time, that does have an effect on your mood and your emotions. And you can be tearful, you feel like you don't know why you're taking everything so hard. And in Carol Smith's research, she's always stressed to be very mindful and try to self-monitor yourself every day. She has a checklist, like, to check your mood on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is you feel like you couldn't do another thing, you're just, not even able to do your basic stuff, and 1 is you're kind of annoyed by some things, but you're still able to get up, do your thing, and you can get out of that mood pretty quickly. And so she tries to encourage people to check that mood every single day and have a repository of coping tools, like, if you like to exercise, or if you like to watch movies, or if you like to read, or if you like to sit in the sun like a cat. Have a list of those things in your mind that you can go to affect your mood, and to know that if those feelings last for 2 weeks, you probably need to see a physician and maybe talk about some additional therapy. Mariah also mentioned about having a therapist or a psychologist to work through things, and I think that was some really sage advice. It's important, just as it is to have nutrition every day, it's important to take care of your emotions every day. Do you have anything to add, Mariah?
No, I agree with all that, and I think, when I was seeking a counselor, I've done it at several different times, and one, when I was just having a life change, moving from Virginia back to Las Vegas, back from being independent, living in my own place, to having to move back in with my family. And then at another time, I was just seeking a counselor just to have an outlet to talk to somebody who was unbiased, who was a family member, who wasn't, invested in anything, and was just a neutral source. And I did my research, and I tried to find somebody who was trained and skilled in working with people who live with chronic or a terminal illness. So my counselor happens to be skilled in working with people with cancer and chronic illness. So a good place to start is your doctor's office. If you don't know anybody in your community who is a therapist that you think might be a good fit, you can start with your doctor and ask them if they know of anybody, or you can try to connect with a social worker at your hospital, and often they'll be a good starting place to give you a recommendation. And you can also reach out to your insurance company, who in your area is a provider that you're actually going to be able to utilize your insurance with, because that's important too. It can be expensive to pay out of pocket. So for me, it was essential that I find a counselor that I was going to be able to utilize my insurance so that I didn't have to pay out of pocket.
It's very important. And another thing is, if you don't feel like the physician or therapist you're seeing is helpful or jives with you, get another one. Because
yes.
Yeah.
The first one may not always be the best fit. And don't feel bad if you see one and you think, wow, she just didn't really get me. That wasn't very helpful. Don't give up. Seek another one. Absolutely.
Right.
Great.
Mhm. Yeah. And like Mariah brought up, someone who specializes in chronic illness, because it's a special field. It's a specialty. And we went through a lot of different therapists that just didn't get it, So, but we found two great ones. And one thing that I did that people might find common is you need to acknowledge that I didn't want to acknowledge in front of my child that I was having problem coping. I wanted to be the strong parent she could rely on, and so when providers ask in front of the other family members, are you having trouble coping? My daughter didn't want to say anything in front of me because she didn't want me to feel bad. I don't want to say anything in front of her because I didn't want her to feel bad. And if you can accept that, the knowledge that these are just physiologic responses to the body experiences that you're having, lack of sleep, stress, worry, all appropriate things add up, and it's okay for each of you to say, I'm starting to feel like I need some more help.
Right, absolutely. I think you make a good point in saying that you don't necessarily have to be experiencing depression or have this, a trauma or a crisis going on within your family to seek help. Honestly, I think it's better to be preventative and kind of get a counselor and start now having somebody that you start seeing regularly, so that when times come, and they will come if you have a child with a chronic illness or you're chronically ill, and then you've already got somebody in your outlet. She knows what you're going through, and it's much easier at that point to work through them and utilize your support system. Then all of a sudden you've got this crisis or you've got this hard time going on, and now you decide to seek somebody out. Then it can be a stressful time trying to find somebody, or you may even be too overwhelmed to do it at that point. I know in our family, my mom sees somebody too, because as a parent of a chronically ill child / adult now, there's a lot of issues that come along with that, as far as transitioning and letting go, and just the stress of worrying about me. So yeah, I think it's important that both patient and parent try to see somebody.
Yeah, that I think that is really wonderful. The preventive thing. I wish people would do that. And when you said that it was a psychologist who dealt with cancer as well, when my husband was diagnosed with cancer last year, this huge team came in, multidisciplinary, before he needed a psychologist, and started those relationships. And I wish they did that as standard for every serious illness.
Absolutely,
That's a
yeah.
great point. Yeah. We talked about fatigue a little bit. Fatigue is a big thing for this population. What do you do? One of the things that Carol Smith has recommended in her research is for some people, power naps work. Little tiny timeouts where you can try to take a power nap. Some people use meditation to kind of calm their mind down if they can. What do you recommend, or is there a way to get better sleep?
Right. I just try to get as much sleep as I can. I'm one of those patients that, I need like 9 to 11 hours of sleep a night, and then I can probably even stick in an hour nap during the day. So I don't always get a nap, but I try to make priority of sleep for me. And, if I'm traveling, I try not to overschedule myself. I try to make sure that I'm in at a decent hour and I don't have something scheduled super early the next day, because I can do it maybe 1 or 2 nights of being, shorted on sleep, but eventually it catches up with me. Um, and I suffer from it, not feeling well and whatnot. So I try to make it definitely a priority for me. And um, other than that, I don't know, just trying to make time for it.
Roz, I would like to ask the folks what other, in the limited time we have left, if they have any questions, or if they wanted us to talk about coping with financial concerns. This is not inexpensive ways of life, or healthcare reform concerns, or anything that they might be thinking of.
Okay, I'm going to, if people have questions, please post them on the questions now so I can provide those to these presenters. And I also want to say out loud some of the comments that people have been typing in about some of the sections you've been talking about. They're not all going to be related to each other, but will be relating to something that you guys have talked about in the past. For example, one person had a tip, a travel tip that said when they go through the airport, they request a TSA escort, and you can do that through TSA Cares 72 hours before your flight. You can request that, and the information on how to do that is at the Oley website. And what that does is it has someone from TSA help you through the whole process. It just makes it friendlier, smoother, and they're aware ahead of time of your particular issues, so it's a little more comfortable.
Cool.
Another parent wanted to say that as a tip to help with the staring body image issues, is that his son's doctor told him to tell the other kids that the NG or NJ tube was for medication, that was easier for the kids to understand, and kind of dismissed their curiosity quicker because it was relatable.
Okay.
And then I wanted to add that I think it's wonderful building that support network proactively the way Mariah was talking about that. And one of the resources you can use for that are the Oley ambassadors, and you can find them through the Oley website under the Meet Patients menu, or you can try our Inspire chat forum. Now I'm going to check the questions to see. Okay, here's the first one. Have you ever experienced insurance denial for a reduced amount of nutritional feed? So if you're making progress but still need nutritional feed, the supply gets drained. And then, hang on one second, there's a, oh, that was a nasogastric tube, not an NG tube, or J tube, I'm sorry, what we were talking about earlier. So they're wondering, and I've heard of this in the Oley office at least, when you reduce the amount of TPN that you're on. You need to work with your provider and your insurance company to be sure you are still within what they are going to cover. If it goes too low, I've heard sometimes the insurance can be cut off, or you may experience a problem with your formula. Do either of you have any experience with that?
I don't have any personal experience with that, but I think it's important to note to talk to your doctor, because he might need to write that TPN order at that level, even if you're not in, say the level that insurance will cover is, a liter. You have to be on at least a liter for them to pay for it. Well, say you're only on half a liter. Your doctor might need to write the prescription, and I don't know if the doctor would be willing to do this for the liter, but you only infuse half of it. Do you get what I'm saying? So you might have to talk to him and say, hey, at this point insurance cuts it off, so can you write the prescription for the higher amount, and then we only infuse, X amount. I don't know if that's an option or not. Donna, do you have anything to add? Did we lose Donna? Roz, are you there?
All right. I am still here. I am not sure where Donna, maybe Donna's line has been disconnected or something. I'm not seeing her. We're getting very close to the wind down time. I'm wondering, Mariah, are there additional points that you have that you would like to offer before we've ended this?
Right. I just want to say at the end that you're not alone. There is a big support community here. Oley is a great resource. So try to reach out and meet somebody else that has a similar situation to yourself. Try to connect online or over the phone with someone. Try to make it out to an Oley conference or a local support group in your area. Meeting with another parent or meeting another patient who has a situation like yourself. There's nothing for that face-to-face interaction. Just a couple days ago, I found my TPN nurse connected me with two women who live in my local area who are older than me, but they're both on TPN. And we got together, we had a little lunch, and, we sat there for like 4.5 hours, and, time flew by. And I realized how wonderful it was to connect face-to-face with each other. So we're planning that hopefully we can start monthly seeing each other and maybe even make a local support group in our areas, because that face-to-face interaction with one another, nothing can supplement that. So I would just say try to connect with somebody else, and as much as they can be supportive of you, I'm sure would be supportive and helpful to them as well.
I'm here. Donna's here. I don't know what happened. But one thing that I would like to say, I didn't know about this world until Audrey, and that every state has a Title V program, and I would like to know what state the 12-year-old is in, if that parent would share that. Because when you're talking about supplies and things like that, there are ways for all across the states. They are getting more and more consumers as advocates for programs and policies that affect their constituents and residents. And so that insurance concern is something that you could take to the state folks, see who's on a committee, how can you get involved. I'm on a family advisory council to our state. And so I think there are things you can do. And then there's another thing. There are leadership opportunities for youth. And I would suggest that Mother Google's Family Voices. And it's called CASA, K-A-S-A. It's like Kids as Special Advocates or something, and they actually teach kids how to advocate for themselves and develop leadership skills, kids with special health care needs.
Donna, the parent has written in that they are in New Jersey, if that's helpful for you.
I think New Jersey has some robust help. And does the mother know about Family Voices?
She says she does not.
Okay, that is a critical resource for her. So she needs to Google. They call it SPAN. Everybody calls it something else, but they call it the Statewide Parent Advocacy Network, SPAN. And that mom needs to connect to that and ask and see, and she can Google Family Voices and look for it in her state because it's in every state. And that money comes out of the federal government. The Health and Human Services helps support this because family support is so important. So I would suggest she get in touch with them and see, can I get on a board? How can I join? How can my son get involved?
Great. You know what? We are running out of time, so I think I need to end this session. What I would like to do is say thank you first to Donna and Mariah for their excellent presentation today. We appreciate your sharing your expertise and for your patience with the technical issues. We want to thank you, say a big thank you to Shire for supporting this important educational program. And we'd also like to thank participants for joining us. We'll be posting a recording of this presentation on the Oley website in case you'd like to catch it again. And if you have further questions, you're welcome to send them in to me at the Oley Foundation about some of the specific resources that were talked about. Again, my name is Rosalind Dahl, and my email address is on the Oley website. And then lastly, we hope that you'll join us for another webinar. Our next scheduled presentation will be held April 11th on short bowel syndrome, including the role of diet and hydration play and available treatments. And we're hoping again to have another one in May on travel, and we have one in June scheduled on gastroparesis. Details on that are at oley.org/webinars. Thank you for joining us today, and we will hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.